Hey again. So we are here. I am Todd Smith, the CEO of Symphony Workforce and Discovery Genius, sitting in the lovely city of Bellevue, Nebraska, with the stakeholders who I think are the shining example of how a city wraps themselves around an economy, right? Number one resource for any economy, after having conversations with each one of you, it really are the young people, right? 13 to 27 and 30 years old. If you can make that group connected to industry in a fashion that is equal to today's speed, right? This thumb-dominated generation that we're in, and each one of you hold an element of that. And so by gathering you all today, we have Mary, the president of Bellevue University. Thank you for coming. We have Kevin, president of the chamber here. We have Jeff, who's the superintendent for K-12. We have Rusty, who's the mayor and also a real estate mogul. Right? We have Steve and Paulette, who oversee Gross Catholic, who's the private school. So in one room, we're talking about economy. We have the players at the top of a community saying this is how and this is what will push us forward. So in that framework, let's start a little conversation about where you see Bellevue, right, today versus where you see it, let's go out 15 years, and how young people connecting to industry will fuel that. Does that make sense? How Bellevue empowers workforce at the leadership level. So Mary, when you think about that, when we had a conversation, we thought Bellevue should be university, can move itself into that space of being the university of workforce nationwide. What does that look like for you, and then how does that relate back to Bellevue as a city?
We're looking at expansion into mostly STEM areas relative to new jobs and new growth. And so we've really expanded to science programs, and then on the same side, the technology programs, because we think those enable people to it's a little hard because we have such a huge number of students who aren't in the area.
Right.
So I kind of got that mix. But our thought was to really focus on where Nebraska wants to go with jobs, and then we invested in those areas. So that's what we're doing. I think that Bellevue has an opportunity, and we've talked about this in some others, I don't know what's in the current strategic plan, but I think Bellevue has a real opportunity to support entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of infrastructure that lends itself to kind of an easy financial start that's different from other communities or other parts of the region. And there's a lot of infrastructure that would allow that to happen. So we have tried entrepreneur programs. I'm to the point of entrepreneurs are going to spring up, and then you try to support them as you go. But creating a program for entrepreneurs, it's been, I can't even count the number I've been in the 30 years I've been in higher ed. I've just decided that, that's not something, but I do think setting up the infrastructure and then looking at STEM, especially in the technology array. And I think we're now seeing that people can live where they want to and work where they want to without those having to be married. That there's more flexibility with work and life.
Absolutely. That, Kevin, we've talked a lot about industries need to be part of driving that connection to youth in a way that they can become entrepreneurs. Right, that they have options, that they can get in and become owners early, and even if not owners, even as an employee with an owner mindset, right? What role does industry play in that in your mind?
Yeah, so from a business standpoint, I think more and more businesses are understanding that the linkages have to be made, whether it's through higher education, and linking back to what's the education that folks need. But more importantly, I think it's having the opportunity for youth to understand what the options are and what the availability is within organizations. And to Mary's point, right? People nowadays can live in one spot, work in a different spot, right? Go to school in another spot.
Right.
All from their computer. So having that accessibility and viability to understand from an industry standpoint, who am I looking for, right? What are the needs that we have today and in the future as an industry? And how are we tapping into folks, youth, who don't necessarily aren't aware of our brand, aren't aware of what the options and the opportunities are, and how can businesses access that pipeline, as well as that potential pipeline learning and understanding what their options are within business.
Absolutely.
And then from the education standpoint, how do we link that and continue to prepare those folks, right, those youth, with the skills that they need to continue down that pursuit, to be able to make that pipeline connect.
Absolutely. That kind of takes us into the education folks at the table, right? So in a past life, I'd go all over the country and talk to communities about growing their economies. And what a lot of superintendents and headmasters kind of wrestled with is that those communities kept losing the top 30% of their test takers, and the remaining 70%, how do you activate that remaining 70% of the kids that stay and educate them where they can be dynamic in the communities? So as you guys think about, right, Jeff, Paulette, how do you see that education model changing to match what industry wants, to be entrepreneurs with the kids that you see today?
I mean, kind of to your point, we need to grow our own, because what we have done is we produce great citizens, we produce great students, and like you said, many of them go off to outside of Nebraska, outside of Bellevue, doing something different. So we've made that a goal in our strategic plan to offer curriculum and opportunities for kids to take classes, dual credits, whether it's through Bellevue or through Metro College, to kind of expand their wings a little bit, instead of just seeing it from Bellevue standpoint. When you get to a Bellevue University, when you get to a Metro, obviously they have many more opportunities and more knowledge of opportunities that are out there for our students. And so we started our Career Center last year. We have an autos program, which you might say, okay, how does that tie into entrepreneurship? Well, somebody needs to own their own garage at some point. And so, but they have to have the skills to do that first. It's gonna be tough to own a auto garage without any mechanical knowledge or how to fix cars. So we're teaching them that skill. That's where I think Bellevue University or Metro, then that next layer would be that entrepreneurial class and courses that prepare them to own their own and manage their own shop. So, and we're gonna expand that into many different areas, but I think Bellevue has a very unique opportunity where I think we're all pretty much on the same page of what needs to happen.
Praise puts you in a position to actually implement the very things that we're talking about at this table in a way that is highway, not dirt road. You know what I mean?
The programs you're talking about, Jeff, I don't know what the language is for what we used to call trade, vocational, et cetera, which
Right.
I would now throw, frankly, a lot of the tech into. Those are the jobs where people create
Yes.
the businesses.
Mhm. Yes.
I mean, not jobs. Those are the skills that lead to those businesses in more than, way more high proportion than other types
Absolutely.
of business, or you name it.
Absolutely. So, Paula, you and I and Steve had a chance to work with all your amazing kids over there at Gross, and what we came away with as a reinforcement is this generation's capacity for empathy. That it's second to none, that the same challenges and hurdles that our generation have had to hop through and muddle through in terms of people with people, right? Your kids showed us that in spades. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing with your families, where they're pushing kids, where they're driving from an industry standpoint, and then that empathy piece, if you can kind of pull that together.
I think it's important, and this is one of the key things that we felt this was good for our kids and growth, was the fact that it challenged them to think outside the normal everyday classroom. We have a lot of kids with Steve's program and the STEM programs that they think broader, they think bigger, the bigger picture. And I think that's because he allows them to do that. You know, he gives them the opportunity, but lets them go with it. He doesn't try to manipulate their path or anything like that. He lets them figure it out on their own, even if it means for them to fail.
Right.
And I think that's an important key for our kids to learn is you're not always going to be perfect the first time. You have to fail sometimes just to get it right. And I think that's one thing that this program has really helped us with, is it's taught our kids that it's okay to fail, and it's okay to rely on each other too as well. These kids, I see things coming out of his program and these kids that he's been working with this Discover Your Genius that I would never have imagined them coming out of their shells, and just they're more active, they're more involved, and they're developing into leadership roles that they may not have without an opportunity like this. And I think that's the biggest piece to it. And it's okay to maybe stumble once in a while, to keep it up, and then to rely on each other too as a team.
Right. Steve, I'm gonna go back to you because as the person in the room closest to the kids, right, I want to kind of close in that space. Rusty, all the things that you've heard, right? So you're the mayor, so you're shepherding over the city, but you're also a long time business owner, right? So you get this from a practitioner standpoint, and then from a shepherd standpoint, from what you've heard at this table from both our public and private schools, your chamber, from your university, what swirls in your head around how to move this economy here at Bellevue?
Yeah, I think our education, we have an outstanding education base. I mean, there's no reason you can't get educated in the Bellevue area. I see the market rents are really low. So if somebody wanted to get out, start their own business, or this is a perfect place to do it. We've got a lot of diversity here. People, the community are accepting. They back the mom and pop stores. They back people that invest in the community. So it's a perfect opportunity to bring that knowledge out. And there's at least a handful of people in town that would even back somebody starting their own business. So there's a lot of opportunity here. This generation is obviously the most educated generation. I mean, they're smart kids.
Right. So
that entrepreneur side, getting them out and letting them know that they can do it, and letting them know trade is okay. I mean, if I had to advise my kids over, I mean, it'd be, don't be afraid to be a plumber. I mean,
Right.
That's a great trade. All the trades are great right now, and there's plenty of work. People are looking for help. So educating them, giving them the opportunity, and so finding that need in the community. So do we need those tradesmen? What tradesmen do we need? Steer them in the right direction. They're going to get jobs. They're going to get well paid. They've got great opportunity here. So
yeah, that is it's amazing, you know. So I come out of a highly educated family, and I've told my son multiple times, go be a nuclear welder through MCC, go get your PM from Bellevue University, and go make a ton of money being a business owner and having people back you, right? We just have to put you around teachers that support that vision and don't corrupt it, right? All the things that you've talked about here. Steve, so talk about what you've seen out of your kids that have participated in the Discover Your Genius challenges. And especially even touch a little bit more on the learning to fail forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what I see in the students, or what I really appreciate about the Discover Your Genius activities, is the way that the kids are encouraged to work on a team, to work as teams, and it really gives them an opportunity to do that like they really don't get in too many other places. And I think it also, I think this kind of teamwork also is an opportunity to use what they've learned. That they learn these skills in classes, but it's almost like having basketball practice all the time and you never get to play the game. And this allows them to play the game, to get in there, to solve a problem, to try to figure out the best solution, to work as a team. I think the teams that that did well this time were ones that had some experience with that
Right.
in the past, and but they were the ones that really could work together and take the different subtasks that needed to be done and divide them up amongst themselves, and they would kind of focus on some part of it, and they were really able to advance much farther as a team. And I think that the team that did the best was the most diverse. You know, we had you know, and to be able to really see that diversity come into play, I think was really exciting too. But you know, I like the teamwork. I like the way that the students, you know, communicate with each other. They get to practice communication skills. You know, and all these things are just hugely important when it comes to you know, trying to do some of these things. Like if you want to start a business, you're going to have to say what that business is very clearly and in as few words as possible, but to make the case that, hey, I'm worth investing in, you know, and this is where they learn to do that, you know. So I think it's you know, it's a great opportunity for the students, and you know, that's one of the things I think, you know, with all the other things, like we have great educational programs, you know, we have great teachers. You know, I know a lot of the Bellevue teachers. I know a lot of, you know, the people that at all levels, K through 12. And, you know, you've got these very hardworking, passionate teachers, but, you know, the kids, you know, they get the education. They get the basics. But what they need is to be able to really go beyond that and make it work. Like, you know, if like, you know, like I said, if you're going to start a business, you have to be able to articulate what it's going to be and why should you invest in me? Why is this a good idea? And so I think it gives them a great opportunity to do that.
That is, it's one of the things, one of our founding principles, right? That you were going to have to learn how to fail fast and with rigor and with courage, right? And not throttle yourself back off of fear, right?
Right.
One of the words that you've all used in one version or another is diversity, right? And so in Bellevue, in our time working in Bellevue, we've seen an immense amount of diversity in the city of Bellevue. And that is not only gender, that's not only ethnic or color of your skin, but it's social economic diversity, right? In Nebraska, as a state that looks like about 38 other states, the diversity, the real diversity is around that social economic piece, where you get your massive numbers and you can really get into the data that says who's doing what, who's moving up, who's moving down, and so on and so forth. It's one of the reasons I've always had affinity for your school, because that zero entry, right? You accept all coming in. It's one of the reasons why I really like Bellevue East and Bellevue West, because when you go into each school, they have their different feel, but the way you pour into both schools, right? I've seen it in your kids, right? In your city. And Kevin, if you would talk a little bit about diversity in your city from what you see and what it can be, would be awesome.
Yeah, you bet. You know, I think we're fortunate, certainly having Offutt Air Force Base here, that brings us a lot of diversity automatically, from folks coming from all over the country, let alone all over the world. And it's kind of all this community has known. So I've talked to a lot of folks, whether it be gender or people of color, right, who have just, they say, I don't even notice it. Diversity is something that we don't celebrate in this community in Bellevue, because I think it's just been so accepted. From a business standpoint, you just glance up and down the roads in Bellevue and see the diversity within the representation of our restaurants from an ethnic standpoint, right? And that's appreciated. In our school systems, right? You've touched on from a socioeconomic standpoint. And so that diversity and that kind of unrecognition of the diversity that we have is what makes Bellevue so appealing.
Yeah.
And it lends itself then, especially with the Discover Your Genius program, but within the educational and the business environment, I think it speaks to the possibilities to folks, right? If they don't see those what are somewhat obvious obstacles in other communities.
Right.
If we're working from a more neutral playing field optically, that just really, I think, releases the potential for these students to be able to participate and potentially fail forward, right? It just opens the doors, it lowers the roadblocks.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well said. Jeff, can you tag on a little bit of that in terms of how you guys, and especially the middle school, high school run, think about diversity, think about, and that's all shades of diversity, right? That's not pegging it on one aspect or the other.
Yeah, I mean, the way we feed our high schools, we don't take one middle school and it goes to one high school and the other one go, we pull from all three of our middle schools, and some of those kids go to Bellevue West and some of those kids go to Bellevue East. So as Kevin has indicated, the community is diverse. Obviously, we want to make sure our high schools are diverse, our middle schools are diverse, elementaries as well. The other key component is about 12% of our students come from outside of Bellevue. And that's from Omaha and Papillion and Millard and Plattsmouth and those areas. So we bring diversity in from other areas as well. I think because of some of the programs that we offer, some of our extracurricular activities, those types of things too. So, it's not just Bellevue, it's also the entire community that we're pulling from. And that goes back to the quality of education, the quality of programs we offer, and individuals wanting to come to Bellevue to receive an education.
Yeah, outstanding. Mary and Rusty, as you're dealing with 18 ups, right, in your worlds, what does Bellevue offer? I am now graduated. I've graduated from OPS, from Westside, from Shadron, from St. Paul, Nebraska. Why am I coming to Bellevue, right, to continue my progression as a young adult into adulthood? What's that conversation sound like?
It's probably the affordability. I mean, it's very affordable community. Again, job opportunities, and what Kevin said, there's the roadblocks. There's not many roadblocks. We manage about 400 properties, anywhere from $400 a month to $2,900 a month, just in residential properties. And the one thing in common is they're all good people. They're all good people. There's not bad people here. So the opportunity, no roadblocks, affordability, and just that sense of community. I think we really have something special in Bellevue.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's a couple things I think that we need to do leadership-wise to keep the people here. And I talked to the folks in the Blueprint Nebraska and the Tech Initiative and you name it. But one of them is the housing issue, and there's just no question that we're constrained. That's why we've had to, build our own and do that. And I think if we could tackle some of those things so that students could stay and work, because when we talk to higher ed across Nebraska, one of the things that higher ed does, and if you think about it, it's sort of contraindicative of where we want to go. When the student graduates, what do? We kick them out of all the housing they've got. We throw them, okay, you're done with school, off you go. And a lot of times they end up without that middle step, and it happens in a lot of other kinds of programs too, where they're kind of faltering. And I think it forces, what I see that it does in higher ed, and I've talked to Ronnie Green, I've talked to the private presidents and all, none of us have the capacity to keep them, which is a good and a bad problem. But by the same token, we're almost forcing them back, in Father up at Creighton too, we almost force them back home, and I think it's an issue that there's some solutions for. I'm gonna have some talk, but I think diversity is not really an issue or a problem here. In fact, we don't even have a diversity and inclusion office, because I feel like it's everybody's responsibility here. And I've got pretty strong group of minority faculty. Could I bring more on? Yeah, as they come up, they come in. But I don't think that the quilt that we have of diverse socioeconomic, racial, and I don't have all the initials anymore, I've lost it, I'm getting too old for the LGBTQIA group. I mean, we're also dealing with that kind of diversity. So I think we have a great framework. I think it's sort of figuring out, okay, if we want to keep them, even after high school, Jeff, not all the kids want to go home, and they're not always going to college. I'm not sure where they go, quite frankly. I don't honestly know where they go. But we haven't thought that, what is that next step? And I've got a couple conversations going on with it, but I think it's the part of that infrastructure. If you want it to happen, that barrier's gotta come down.
Nice. And not to say that this doesn't happen in other communities,
Right.
but this is the beauty of Bellevue, right? We can get these people around the table in the room and have these types of conversations.
Right.
Right, the connectivity and the recognition of the interdependence of all of the pieces
Right.
is what really brings it together, right?
Right.
And again, we can say from a business standpoint, the education standpoint, right? And Rusty representing as a business owner, and then holistically what's good for the community. What Mary was talking about, that's great information.
Absolutely.
Right? That already the receptivity of, how do we address that obstacle?
Right.
Right? The willingness for everyone to work together and that connectivity. It just plays into our community and plays in so well to Discover Your Genius, right? Because that's really what we're trying to do, is that connectivity between what does business need. There's a stat that says for every 3 employees that will leave the workforce, there's only 1 that will enter the workforce, right, from a population standpoint. So industry has to get more creative of how do we do what we do differently and with less manpower, which then affords these youth, right, to be creative and come up with the ideas, and then that linkage is happening, and they're being educated for that at the high school level,
Right.
as well as, right, basic information, and then expanding that skill set and that breadth of knowledge at a higher end standpoint to be able to just make that pipeline and that flow work.
Absolutely, and one of the, but you guys know very well, is the data that industry needs so that they're making better recruitment, hire, retention, promote decisions, right? So no one's losing money in the wrong hire, right? You get more kids in the hiring process, but everyone's finding what they were built, their why, and their what, right? So now both as the young person or the employee, I'm at the right place with the right culture fit, I can learn more hard skills and I'm off and running. Versus, I chose the wrong place, I've wasted 3 years, and now I'm behind the curve. You said something earlier, and we're gonna wrap up and give you guys back your day, but this is something that I was sitting at the end of the table and I realized, is that I know the Bellevue story because we've been working here in Bellevue for about 2 years. And I've had a chance to meet all of you in a real way, and we've worked on things. What I hope this interview starts is the rebranding of Bellevue in a significant way to young people in a 5-state area to say, hey, Bellevue's a really good landing spot for me. And it's a great landing spot because when I have a family, I have 2 amazing choices, whether I'm a public school or private school. That's my bent. I have a business community that is leaping to help me, right? A real estate model that's growing with choice, right? And I have leadership that's saying, hey, by the way, I want to connect all this together, because that story has to be told. Because truly in our work around the state, we're working in 36 states, this is a absolute shining star example of how communities get better and grow, is what you guys are doing right here in Bellevue. And it's without question. So kudos to all of you, truly. Okay? And we're gonna wrap up. It's been a pleasure, and we will talk to you next time.